Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. And it is Tuesday, so that means it is our Tuesday night live program. I want to thank everybody for joining us. And as promised, we're doing something a little different. As you can tell, we are not at the Crime Talk studios. No, we are not. We are not in Kansas anymore. And we have a guest that's been with us a couple of times. What do you say?
I think this is the
fourth time. We have Mark Carlson joining us this evening. And for those of you who haven't been here before, Mark Carlson is a private investigator, former police officer, and he's my top investigator that I use. I got a couple in the stable, but he's my guy that I go to get it done. And I don't know, what have we got, like 4 or 5 homicide cases going right now or something? At least,
yeah.
So he's my guy. And so he has been gracious enough. Only thing I had to bribe him with was I can feed you barbecue, which I picked up. We have eaten, and we have also agreed that we would partake of a fine cigar. So here we are at the Crime Talk 1 hangar that is still empty. No plane yet, but I've been told, and I have court down by that airport Thursday. I'm going to go down there. We have done everything to move mountains to try and get the landing gear rebuilt faster. It's not the people that have the plane. It's the people that have the landing gear in Georgia. So if you know of anybody that can fix the landing gear in Georgia, that's where you're going to do it. So, all right, enough of that talk. Now, I think Frank, he's behind the cameras. He's the one that gets all this stuff set up. I said, Frank, Mark's coming out Tuesday. We're going to the hangar. He gets everything all set up. He hasn't even eaten yet. So we got to make sure it all works, and he's going to eat. But I'm not sure if he's going to. Are you going to be able to eat, Frank, if we're flipping back and forth? All right. But I think the case that Mark and I were going to talk about is the Bryan Kohberger matter. Now, obviously, Bryan Kohberger, death penalty case up there in Latah County, Idaho, accused of killing 4 young college students. And there's not a trial. He got arrested in 2022 and December of 2022. Yep. And here we are, summer, almost fall of 2024. So next June, we're going to have a trial. We're going to have a trial in whether it's Boise or Latah. We're going to do it. So, you know, Mark has been keeping up on his true crime stuff. And I also want to talk about an article that you sent me today. Maybe we'll talk about that first. He sent me an article today. There's a channel out there that put out a video about a very horrific murder and was here in the state of Colorado, Littleton, and kind of stretched along the Front Range. And it turns out it was all fake. The YouTube channel is creating false, fake stories using AI. And the video had gotten, I think, 1 million views or 2 million views.
2 million views.
2 million views, and it was fake.
Yep.
And I get it. I appreciate people, you know, in the true crime genre want to, you know, be up on the next case, want to hear about the case, the unsolved case, you know, what have you. But, you know, if somebody's typing in old ChatGPT, create me a story based in Denver, Colorado, where a wife is killed by her husband, and
complete with photos, videos.
Yeah, all that stuff. And it turned out to be completely fake.
Yep.
And the prosecutor is like, this is not good.
I just started, when I read that and sent it to you, I started thinking about the ramifications, potential ramifications, both from the defense side and the prosecution side. And I'm sure technology will catch up, but right now nobody can ascertain what's real and what's a fake. And I mean, think of all the cases that we have, the murder cases and the videos that people turn over from their personal surveillance and their house. Like, how are we going to know? How's anybody going to know if that's real or not?
I mean, you have to have an expert take a look at it. We've had cases where people were arrested, and then it finally came out that the woman maybe edited some of the recordings that were turned over to the police, and maybe left out some things that maybe weren't so flattering to the person recording, but made the client look very bad. And I think it's interesting because years and years ago, you were probably a police officer at the time. Remember, it was the CSI effect. Everybody thought that every homicide or crime was solved within 60 minutes or 50 minutes, including commercial breaks. And at that point, everything went to the lab. The DNA came back, the fingerprints, the hair follicles, you name it, all came back just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know as a defense attorney, we hyped it. Where's the evidence? Where's this? Where's this? They could have tested for it. Well, the reality of it is, in most cases, unless the DNA is going to be the thing identifying the person, if there's a video or something, they wait on those lab testings until it is set for trial. Because I hate to break it to you, ladies and gentlemen, justice is expensive, and DNA testing is expensive, very, very expensive.
And it's frustrating for us. You're trying
you have to wait.
Yeah, you can't even identify witnesses necessarily, because you don't know who's going to be identified. You don't know what the role is going to be, and even as far as trying to determine a strategy, especially with the DNA now, because I remember, and I'm sure you do, when DNA finally first kind of really got started, and it was only the most serious of the serious cases. They do DNA now on everything. They do DNA on auto thefts and burglaries and you name it, everything.
And because, I guess the price has come down, it is a little easier. But I remember the only cases that truly got DNA were, where there was no identifiable suspect for like a sex assault. We had the notorious burglar cases, because every burglar that ever went into a house smoked a cigarette and literally threw it on the ground as they left, kind of as an insult, an FU to the property owner. Not only am I here funneling my hands through all of your stuff, here's a big FU. I'm going to smoke in your house, and then I'm going to squish the little cigarette butt there, which left the DNA. And they would test, and we get all these people that pop for that.
Yep.
And now, like you said, they swab the most simplest of cases for DNA. It's kind of very unbelievable.
It is, yeah, and well, of course, the whole separate topic, but the Misty Woods thing up at CBI and all of that, and with the DNA. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty rare now that you get a felony case that doesn't have some sort of a DNA thing.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's more common now than DNA is cell phones.
Oh yeah,
I mean, they dump cell phones on literally everything, and it just is it's a mess.
Have you ever talked about the geofence warrants in this forum?
Yeah, go ahead and mention it though. Yeah, I mean, it's I think totally unconstitutional, and
it's the case right now that we got up in Larimer County, and well, it wasn't just Larimer, but that was one of them. They were breaking into car dealerships and stealing U-Hauls and then using those to ram other stores, and but that's how they didn't even have a suspect. That's how they got the suspect, was just asking for the geofence warrants and then comparing the results. And
for those who don't know, geofence warrant is when the police say, hey, we know that a crime was committed at this particular location, and they'll give like a block, say Ace Hardware was broken into on the corner of 52nd and Elm, and I'm just making that name up, and they give the locations of 52nd and Elm, like latitude and longitude. They send a warrant to Google and say, hey, what subscriber, what's GPS information was at 52nd and Elm between, I don't know, 12 a.m. and 1:20 a.m. when they believe that the store was broken into, and it'll send back, coincidentally, somebody's phone.
Well, it'll send
their
back
identifier,
a list of them.
A list, but in this case, it was a list of one at that time of the day.
Yeah, there's sometimes that. Well, that was the way that remember the arson and Green Valley Ranch that killed the 5 people.
Yep.
That was how they finally solved that, was through a geofence. So yeah, sometimes it comes up with lists and lists and lists. And then if they have multiple crime scenes, then they start narrowing, matching up the lists and all of that. But it's a pretty broad scope in terms of
information.
Yeah.
And that case it wasn't our case, but it went to the Colorado Supreme Court, and they challenged it based upon this geofencing. And it was also general search.
Yeah.
It turned out one of the suspects that burned the house down where 5 people died, and it was something over a stupid school dispute. They were high school students or something.
Yeah, somebody got somebody's phone taken or something like that.
Yeah. So what's the logical thing to do? Well, let's go burn the house down. That'll show them.
And they had the wrong house.
They had the wrong house, and it killed 5 people. But the Supreme Court took it up. Colorado Supreme Court took it up. And then they said, hey, this is totally illegal. But since it's kind of a case of first impression, we're going to let it stand, but don't do it again. Like, good work, guys, but don't do it again. And like I said, the cell phone, the geo searching, all that stuff. We're going to see that in the Kohberger case. I'm sure we will. They haven't come out and discussed it all, but it's going to be there. And then Kohberger, obviously his big problem is, and some people act like it's no big deal, his knife just happened to be on the K-bar sheath button that was underneath the body. Like most jurors, I don't care about the CSI effect, the don't trust the government effect. You got to be able to explain how your DNA got into someone's house on a item that wasn't theirs. You can go with the guy, tell us the clerk, the Democratic clerk in Las Vegas, who said, well, it wasn't me that killed the reporter that wrote bad things about me. It was somebody else. It was the big conspiracy of people trying to get the properties and what have you. You got to come up with something better than that, and you got to be able to prove it.
It's, the one thing that technology has done is it definitely makes it harder to get away with the crime. And, the first it was the DNA. I guess if you go way back, you go back to fingerprints, and then you go to DNA, and then you go to cell phone stuff. And now the GPS information in cars, that's one I'm seeing
all the time
now in cases. And it's just, it's hard to get away with crime.
It's very hard because there's so much video surveillance around
everywhere,
and people have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless you were out in the middle of the field in the eastern part of the state, say, for example, maybe then you'd be assured that there was no video camera out there. But if your car has GPS capability, they can track your car. Most of, anything built probably within the last 5 years, I think.
It may be even older than that, but yeah, certainly in the last 5 years.
They're going to be able to track you.
Yep.
They're going to get your little black box. You're going to get your little computer. And the thing is, it's not even in your car. They can just send a warrant, a subpoena off to the people, the car manufacturers, say, hey.
Well, it's the same with your phone. They don't have to recover your phone.
Yeah.
They can just do the search warrant for, whoever, AT&T or
iCloud.
Whoever it is, and get all your, where your phone is pinged off of, any GPS coordinates that your phone was registering. I mean, it's something.
Now, not that we are encouraging anybody to commit crime, because we are not.
No.
I'm telling you, don't do it. But there's such a paper trail on everything these days. The digital trail, breadcrumbs that you leave, are just simply everywhere. And you cannot, it makes it much more difficult to get away with anything. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. It's a good thing for society, but a bad thing in the sense that if you're going to commit crime, you're probably going to get caught.
Yeah, and even DNA. I remember originally it was limited the type of things they could get DNA from, or even like saliva, for example. When DNA originally started, saliva by itself they couldn't get DNA from. Mm-hmm. And even obviously even that has changed.
Well, I remember this was going back to like 1996. I was in the military, but I had a case that involved DNA, and it was brand new. And we challenged it, Daubert hearings. This is unreliable. You can't trust it. And you would have those hearings for a couple of years after that. And now it's just so widely accepted that it's good. Except when you have an analyst who is not exactly maybe just being a scientist and letting the chips fall where they may. We have the case of Missy Woods, who was the Colorado Bureau of Investigator lead forensic scientist, I guess. She's the one that basically did the testing, confirmed it, came to court and testified and said, that's the bad man sitting over there at the defendant's table. Well, it turns out that she resigned abruptly due to some irregularities in her testing process. The state is doing their own investigation. They brought in independent labs, but they haven't specifically said how many cases were affected. And so the question now comes, and I've had clients say, hey, was she on my case? There's just a bunch of
originally I
stuff.
think they said it was like cases from 2009 through 2021 or something. Now they backed it up and they're saying since 1995, I think, or 1998.
The legislature appropriated some $7 million for DAs to go back and retry these cases because of the chaos that they anticipate that it will entail.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, and this is the problem, and this is, I think, a bigger issue, is who can you trust anymore? I mean, it used to be, they're the scientists. They're like, I'm not part of the team. I'm just an independent scientist. I have no dog in this fight. But they do. And, the old trust the science. Yeah, but if they're manipulating the science, then what are you supposed to? You can't.
Yeah, it's like a computer. You can trust a computer as much as you can trust the person that's inputting the information. Same way with the science. It's not the science that's necessarily faulty. It's the person doing the science or conducting the tests.
Yeah, we had a case. You didn't work on this case, but it started off it was going to go death penalty case. We talked them out of that. Throughout the entire print, we had a DNA expert. It was a cold case, horrific murder, multiple murders, sex assault, home invasion, drug deal, gone bad. So let's just kill everybody in the house. And we had an expert there testifying. We kept saying there's something wrong with the DNA. Your DNA results are wrong. They're wrong. And the judge, the prosecutor, all looked at us like we had a third eye on our forehead, just thinking we were just a bunch of idiots. How dare you question the Denver Police Department crime lab? They are beyond reproach. How dare your hired gun come in and do it? Well, he is a PhD in biological chemistry, whatever he was.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, there's something wrong. There was errors in this. This is not right. Client gets convicted. Fast forward like 8 years later, they send out a letter. Ooh, yeah, we were doing some of those audits. Remember all the stuff where we said we were beyond reproach, completely impeccable? Well, we didn't pass some of our audits. And what they found was all those anomalies that you said were true, that something wasn't right. You were right. It turns out our lab DNA technician's DNA was in
oh my gosh
the results, and it skewed it.
Well,
and so
errors happen, non-intentional errors happen, but as it appears is the case with Miss Woods, formerly from CBI, those weren't unintentional errors.
It would seem because we'll give everybody the presumption of innocence. No charges have been filed. But my guess is anything that they'll announce their report. No charges will be filed after all these 28 years of honorable service with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Sure, she was fudging the numbers, skewing things. And the thing is that some real serious cases that she did this. The axe murder one.
Yeah,
I remember that case as a kid.
Yeah,
it was the axe murder. There was one in Aurora, and there was one in Jefferson County.
Yep, in Lakewood.
And they finally got the guy who went into the house. People had left their garage door open, and he beat the family to death. I think one child survived with a hammer.
Yep.
And it was her DNA that linked the guy. And apparently what people have said is that if they were like really focused on a guy, they got the DNA and they're like, yeah, because it's all statistics. And I don't know. Can you really trust the DNA evidence anymore? I don't know. It's the old garbage in, garbage out.
Yes.
It's only as good as the people doing the testing. It's only as good as the equipment. But like most people, if you make an error, oh, gee, we messed up, right? Messed up. Well, they will fight it to the bitter end.
And usually the protocol, I believe the protocol is somebody else in the same lab reviews the result that they got, but I believe nobody actually retests it.
Yep.
Which
they rubber stamp it.
Yeah, which maybe that should be a new protocol, is you run the same test 2 times, 2 different people.
They got to do something, because it seems like it's happening more and more where stuff is questionable. And they completely changed their, it used to be, the likelihood of being the defendant and some other person is, 1 in 865 quadrillion. I mean, I don't know, like 20 zeros or something on there. You're like, oh my gosh, that's really bad, right? But then you look at it, you talk to your expert, like, no, this is all wrong. And the way they do the statistical analysis, now it's a strong, very strong results or recommendation that it's the same person. It's just weird. They just keep playing with the numbers, and they skew their sample size, which affects the numbers as well. I mean, if you test 1 of 1, it's got to be him, right? 1 of 2, it's 1 in 550 quadrillion. But then when they have a bigger pool to choose from, their numbers go down, and they don't like that. So they have to skew the numbers.
There's got to be a better protocol in place. Oh, and by the way, wasn't she also responsible for writing the protocol or the procedure for CBI?
Yep.
Yeah.
But once again, how dare you question the great Missy Woods?
Right.
The lab also had a deal a couple years ago, and I forget the lady's name, for the DUI. She would testify all around the state for the DUI results.
The blood test results. Yep.
And it turned out, once again, cutting corners.
Yep.
And she resigned abruptly as well. And they're going to, we're not going to use this lab anymore. We're not going to do, all the changes.
It's chemotox, right?
Yeah. No, it wasn't chemotox.
Wasn't it chemotox?
No, it was the state lab.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was the state lab. Chemotox, I think, had shut down years before that. But the point is that, I trust nobody. I believe it when the check clears the bank, so to speak. And I want to see it from my own eyes.
Well, and that's also why, we tell clients all the time, we want to have an expert review this or whatever. And because, first of all, we're not experts in it. I kind of tend to read what the police chemist wrote and assume it's correct, because how would I know otherwise?
Well, that's the problem. But you can't assume anything.
Exactly.
That's why we use your services quite a bit, because regardless of what the person said on the body cam video these days, we're used to write on a statement. Maybe they had time to reflect. Did you forget something? Did you exaggerate that a little bit? Assume nothing. I mean, it's really what it comes down to. And, like I said, who are you going to believe, me or my lying eyes, so to speak?
Speaking of body cam, that was another article I was going to send you. Did you see the Aurora Police Department announced that they had the same company, I think it was the same company, Axon, that makes the taser.
Yeah.
They have an AI program that they're trying out, and it reviews every second of audio on body cams, and it looks for certain unprofessional conduct, swearing, threat, stuff like that. And they did it for a 6 or 9 month period. They took 220 officers in their department, and they ran the programs through that. And the result was they found that those 226 officers that knew that their body cam was going to be reviewed. They had a 56% less likely to use words and stuff that would be unprofessional, engage in, which that didn't surprise me either. And police are no different than the general public, but if you know you're being watched, you're less likely to misbehave, which it wasn't reviewing the video, it was just reviewing the audio.
Yeah.
But they were speaking more professionally, different tone, not swearing as much, again, my argument for body cams has always been, if you're a good professional police officer, you would want that.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? So, and they did the same experiment, or same, I guess, test period at a department in South Carolina, and they had an 83% more likelihood to not misbehave. So it's pretty good technology, but it's expensive. It was $250,000 to do that for
Wow.
220 officers for 6 months.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's good. I mean, I'm a firm believer. Body cams are a good thing, and most police officers that I've talked to about it swear by them.
Absolutely.
They won't go anywhere without them.
No.
I was down. We had a client that hired us for a quick, it was a hit and run, and they're like, "All right, come down here, bring the car." They take pictures of the car voluntarily. No damage. Is your client going to make a statement? Nope. But I remember walking out with a detective. He was like, "Oh, here's my body cam. Don't leave." But he's like, "I'm going to turn my body cam on. Don't leave anywhere without it. I don't have any interaction with anyone." Because apparently he must have had a complaint,
Mm-hmm.
and it saved his butt.
Yeah.
And you talk to like the IA, internal affairs people, and the number of complaints against police officers where they've been founded have gone down exponentially, because they're like, "Well, let's just pull the video. Let's pull the video." And then it's like, that's not exactly what I said, but for so long it was the person on the street versus the cop, and they were, "Oh, cop didn't believe me and they screwed me. Let's take a look at the video."
Yep. Well, and that's just it. I mean, I don't know the numbers. I'm sure there are numbers somewhere, but I'm sure it has helped far more officers in terms of internal investigations than it's hurt.
Yep. But we also have one now where, coincidentally, when they were searching a car, they forgot to turn it on. And then they try to say, "Well, that's not really an interaction or police." That's the definition of it. You're conducting a search of a client's car that the dog says he triggers on an illegal substance, and they find nothing. Then allegedly they find a gun.
Right.
But the point is, why didn't they, have that?
Yep. It's I think that when did the state law in Colorado take effect? Was it beginning of 23?
Yeah, where it has to be recorded.
Yep.
Yep.
Every sworn peace officer interacting with the public has to have a body cam.
Yep. And if it's the officer's duty and the DA's responsibility to turn it over, and if they don't, it can be suppressed. It's basis for suppression right now.
Yep.
If the officer fails to turn it on. So it's a good thing.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So let's talk about Bryan Kohberger. All right. Obviously he's, charged with murdering 4 college students there in Latah County. Our neighbor looks like they're going flying this evening. So she was waving.
Yep.
Taking her guest out there with her.
Yep. Nice night for her.
So anyway, Bryan Kohberger. Trial's not going to go on until June of 2025. Motion to change the hearing. And I don't know if you watched any of it, but the defense was prepared. The prosecution had nothing other than saying, "Well, we'll just have to wait and see," which is normally what's done on a motion for change of venue. I've probably only filed a handful in my entire life. Usually it's been in small towns. Judge denies it and says, "We'll just wait and see if we get a verdict, or if we can get if we can get a jury, and then they can deliberate to get a verdict." And then the one case that we had down in Telluride years ago, that one, the judge, we filed a motion. Judge's like, "Yep, we're granting it." Prosecution's like, "But judge," she's like, "It's in the same judicial district, but we're moving it from," God, what was that little town, that little jurisdiction? It was
Nathrop. That was the area where it occurred, but it was in
San Miguel County.
San Miguel,
which has maybe like 10,000 people, maybe.
Not many.
But the local radio station talked about it every day. It was the only radio station in town. Everybody talked about it. I remember we flew into the airport, asked people, "Hey, heard about it?" "Oh yeah, they're guilty. They're guilty." And it was completely anecdotal. We didn't conduct a neighborhood survey, but it was anecdotal. But in the Kohberger case, they spent a lot of time and money preparing these surveys, saying that 70% of the population knows about this case. I think there's 40,000 people in the city. the county there of Latah County. And like the defense is saying, let's just move it. It's a death penalty case. Let's just move it to Boise, where we got 400,000 people to choose from. And, you know, they talked about there were threats that were made that if they didn't get Kohberger convicted, that they were going to, you know, they're going to lynch him and they're going to go, you know, break him out of the jail and hang him. And then a little bit of an exaggeration, but they said there was going to be violence. And so the judge at the end of the hearing the other day was struggling. This is the toughest decision that I've ever professionally had to make as a lawyer. And I'm thinking,
Wow.
This is a no-brainer, Judge. Like, the defense has put on all this evidence. The prosecution has presented none, hired no experts, just said, well, you can't trust the research. But that's the only evidence the judge has to make his opinion upon. And I guarantee you, if Bryan Kohberger goes to trial in Latah County, gets convicted, and gets sentenced to death, one of the first issues on appeal would be change of venue.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. You're going to move the trial 400 miles away. It's expensive for the DA, the judge, and everybody to pack up and go down to spend 6 weeks in Boise. But, you know, the point is that why? One of the duties the judge has, as well as the prosecutor, is to protect the record, to make sure there is no appellate issue on the case. And I know sometimes you don't like it, but it's the best thing to do.
It just seems really easy to err on the side of caution. I mean, especially with that's an internationally known case,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, it's such an easy thing to. I guess logistically, maybe it's not, but in terms of the decision, it's such an easy thing to do, just to ensure that there's not an issue.
Yeah. I used to have a boss in the military that I remember I was a young prosecutor and said, well, you know, Judge, we're the recruit depot. All the witnesses have moved on. They're scattered all over the country or in the world in that case. But most of them are on active duty, so you just give them orders and you ship them back. But the command has to pay that out of their expense, but their budget for legal that they have every year. I'm like, you know, sir, is it really, you know, worth it? Maybe we just make him a good deal. And my boss looked at me, the colonel, and said, justice is expensive, and there's always money for justice. They always find it. It's always a burden. It's always a hardship on all of these cases. What also comes to mind is the Aurora Theater shooting case. You know, the DA's office went back to the county commissioner and said, we need more money.
Yep.
And suddenly they got whatever they needed.
Yep.
Because there's always money for justice. And my thinking is, as my boss used to always say, they would make requests for discovery and, you know, come up with our denied, don't need it, not relevant. And once again, the colonel, smart guy, been around the block. That's why he's a colonel. He's like, listen, we're going to give them whatever they want, and we're still going to convict your guy. And I think if the prosecutors were smart in the Kohberger case, they'd say, you know, Judge, here's the deal. We don't want to do this. It's the victims are here. The community has a right to be here to hear the case. And we totally respect that. And we think it should stay here. But let me just put this on the record, Judge. And let me put this on the record for Mr. Kohberger. You tell me when and where, Judge, to have this trial. We will be prepared. We will show up. We will prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt to each and every element of offense charge. Bryan Kohberger will be convicted, and we will sentence him to death for these 4 heinous murders that he committed. We don't want to do it, but you know what? He's entitled to due process. It's a death penalty case. We're going to give him super hyper due process, and we're still going to convict you.
Yep.
That's the way I think the prosecutors should approach that, instead of, frankly, making lame arguments in court that aren't going to carry the day. I mean, sometimes you just have to concede it's a weak argument.
I thought one of the articles that I had read regarding the change of venue, the prosecutor made a comment, something like, it's not really going to matter where we move it to in terms of it, the publicity is everywhere.
Everyone's going to know about it.
Right. And I mean, if that's your best argument, that seems a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, and the point is, it's not that would the people in Latah County not be fair and impartial? There's a presumption that the jury will follow the court's instructions, right? Don't talk about this case. There's a presumption they followed that. These are the instructions of law. You can't talk about the case until the end of the case. Don't do that. There's a presumption that they follow the rules. And I get that, but I think the bigger issue is everybody in that town will know or know somebody that knows somebody that's actually on that jury.
Yep.
The 12 jurors plus the 4 alternates or 6, however they decide to pick. And the question is, are they going to be able to go back to the community? Let's say they quit the guy.
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to go back and not be ridiculed and scorned for doing that? And that's the biggest issue, I think, is that it's not that will they make the right decision. I think the jurors will usually get it right and make the right decision based upon the evidence and the fact. They usually do.
Yep.
But it's the issue of will these jurors feel comfortable with their decision?
Well, and the whole issue maybe of sequestration too. I mean, is it such a small town, and would there be so much undue pressure? Are they going to have to, they're going to have to put them up in a hotel for? I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a 3 or 4 week trial.
6 weeks, I think, is
6
what they're
weeks.
planning.
They're going to have to put them up in a hotel the whole time. I mean,
it's expensive.
Well, it's expensive, and it's a huge inconvenience to the jurors. I mean, it's inconvenience enough serving on a jury for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But then if you have to be away from your family, and
if you're a juror in Boise and you're like, okay, I can be away for 6 weeks or I can make accommodations, but I can at least go home at night and kiss my kid and make sure the homework's getting done. My spouse, I love him dearly, but if I'm not there to, put out his shirt for the next day, he'll mix plaids and stripes or something.
Right. Yeah.
Who knows?
Who's going to make my kids lunch for school in the morning?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just weed out so many people there under those circumstances that I think it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, you have a bigger jury pool. You're less likely to have people in the community who know who's on the jury. That's any small town. I mean, town of 40,000 people isn't that big.
Yeah.
Or a county of 40,000 people, I guess.
And I hate to keep going back when I was in the military, but it just seems. But we were on a small base. We were at Parris Island, South Carolina. And when you get court-martialed for a court-martial, when the new general shows up for a general court-martial, he then randomly selects, people that are going to serve on the jury panel. Like they're the potential members of the jury. And you go through like, Major so-and-so, I see you're on this jury. And the chief of staff who reports to the general who convened this court-martial writes your fitness reports. Do you have any concern that this would affect your fitness report in any way if you were to find my client guilty and go back to work the next day? Oh, no, I would not have any problem. The general knows it's my decision. How does he know that? Well, we talked about it before we came over.
Exactly.
Those types of situations. Small communities are just very, very tough to get people. The case that we did down in southeastern part of the state.
Yeah.
Came to find out later, everybody knew a secret but us. Everybody knew a secret but us.
Right.
It's one of those weird cases where, spouse is dead. You're not dating anyone, are you? No. And apparently everybody knew but us. So, I mean, small towns are tricky. They're weird. I remember doing a case up in Steamboat once. It was a DUI case. And I kicked the DA's butt. Any other jurisdiction, I would have won. And I'm sitting there waiting, explaining stuff to my client. And the jurors walking out and the DA's walking out. And they're like, see you on the slopes, man. We weren't going to let them get,
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, and you're just like, are you kidding me? I got hometown.
Wow. Well, it happens. And I think small town politics come into play a lot more. You can see the jury in Adams County or Jefferson County, Denver County, whatever. And they're from such a diverse culturally or whatever, work wise, where they work, what they do, what they believe.
It's very diverse.
Exactly. But in small town, there's an awful lot of people that feel and think similarly in such a small area, and it's I'm sure it's hard to overcome that.
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion that whenever you do a small town case and you're the quote big city lawyer, that you always get local counsel.
Mm-hmm.
So that hold on here, we have to wait a second. Our neighbors are starting up the jet. Frank, can you get that? Hold on. I don't know if you can hear that, but isn't that not one of the greatest sounds in the world? Oh, look, Frank. There you go. See? I think you can still hear me, but we'll wait a second. One of the inconveniences of doing the show at the airport, I guess. Wait a second. We'll wait a second. It'll just be a minute.
Probably just flying to Kansas City for some barbecue.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
I've been out here before, and they'll pull the plane out. What are you gonna do? We're gonna go have breakfast in Steamboat. Fly down to the southern part of the state. Get some tacos. You can hear it okay? Okay. Frank says we can hear it okay. All right. We'll do it. Just a little closer until it takes off, I guess.
I remember when we flew into Montrose most recently, there was a guy that maybe we were getting ready to leave and he was coming in, and they had flown down to Santa Fe for the morning to get breakfast and flew back.
Yep. We've done that before. You got to stay current. You got to keep those hours up.
Absolutely.
Do those number of landings before you do that. Okay, there they go. They're moving. They're on the move. There they go. They're just going to go take a quick little flight. I think they're taking one of the daughters out flying. Don't you love the smell of Jet A in the evening?
It does smell good.
Greatest smell ever. A little kerosene. And that sound when it starts up. Isn't that just the best? When they hit the generator button and it starts turning turbine, then they add a little gas in, and then it's the best ever. All right.
You sound like you're having withdrawals from your own. All right.
CrimeTalk 1 has been in the shop now for 5 months, and I'm questioning whether I can actually fly it anymore. I have no idea. How do we do this thing anymore? It's been that long. But anyway, well, hopefully, I keep thinking just a couple more weeks. They're pressuring them. I just keep telling the mechanics, when's the Christmas party? I feel like I'm one of the family down here. But they want to get it out of there just as much as I want to get it out of there. But anyway, so back to Bryan Kohberger.
Yep.
So I still think his biggest problem is, and there's going to be lots of motions to suppress very soon. They're being filed. I'll have to double check the deadline date, but they're coming up. And one of my problems is, and I've talked about this, and maybe you can confirm it, because I feel like I am the only person that is offended when they seal everything in a case.
Ugh.
And when they close the courtroom. And correct me if I'm wrong, other than maybe a juvenile proceeding, I cannot think of a single time, other than maybe an ex parte hearing, like on a motion to withdraw, which obviously has to be silent, be kept secret from the prosecution. I can't think of a single time when the judge said, "Oh, this is such a sensitive topic, and it could cause embarrassment to people. Therefore, we are going to close the courtroom and have a closed hearing."
That kind of goes against everything our system is built on. I mean, it's supposed to be a public proceeding.
Exactly. And think about it. I mean, I keep telling people, you could walk into any courtroom on any given day. There's a motions hearing. It could be a sexual assault on a child, a sexual assault case in graphic detail, where that witness is there testifying, and nobody's going to kick you out of the courtroom. They may ask, "Are you here for a particular side?" Make sure you're not a witness in the case. But anybody could walk in and just take a look at that. And going back kind of the transparency thing with police officers and body cam videos, I would put cameras in every courtroom. Everybody should be able to live stream and watch every court proceeding that takes place. Colorado's getting better. They're putting a lot of them on, WebEx, but you can't live stream them because they say so. We're going to live stream it, but we're not going to let everybody really take a look at it.
Well, you followed some of the problems they're having with the WebEx, right? With the
so tell the story about the WebEx. For those who don't know, WebEx is where they live stream court proceedings. People can log in.
If you're a participant,
Mm-hmm.
you can log in, and so you don't have to actually attend court in person. You can, I guess anywhere where you can get cell phone coverage, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But people are showing up on camera doing things they're not supposed to be doing, and
let's just say it involves pornography.
Exactly.
And the judges and the clerks, when there'll be some unidentified person, and it's like that picture of it was a joke that went around. People sent it to you. "Oh, let's look at this." And you look at it, and there's like this very large black man with his private parts exposed, and they can't get it down.
No, and they don't know how to prevent it other than closing down WebEx.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure somebody will figure it out, but if you're going to let people log in to participate in the proceedings, I don't know how you're going to.
And you can say, "I'm just an observer.
Yeah.
I just want to observe." And they don't have to identify themselves, just to observe.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they got porn up there, and the courts are like, oh my, oh my, oh my, how do we, oh my. And they just can't seem to figure out how to fix the problem.
And it hasn't happened once. Apparently, it's been an ongoing. In some counties, it sounds like it's more prevalent than others.
Yeah, it seems to be Arapahoe County, I think, has had the worst stint with the pornography showing up on the WebEx. So, I mean, but the point we were talking about was complete and total transparency. For people to have trust in the court system, they need to be able to see what's going on. They need to be able to see, hey, did this person get convicted because he was railroaded or because he was truly guilty with overwhelming evidence? Were the prosecutors good? Were they skilled? Did they overcharge the case? Did they not overcharge it? Was the defense representation, was this guy competent or not competent? How about the judge?
It seems like a really easy thing to do. If you're going to live stream it, you don't have to have, it doesn't have to be two-way participation. Be like live streaming a football game. You're not appearing on camera at the football game.
Yeah.
So why not just live stream it? And then if there's I guess if a juvenile is going to testify or something like that.
And they can make accommodations.
Well, yeah, they can just turn off the live stream temporarily.
I've seen that done.
So it seems like it's a pretty easy fix.
But you think that transparency, I mean, there's no faith in institutions that are not transparent. That's why we have open records laws. Government's not supposed to do deals in the back room unless it's very specific. A lot of states have what they call sunshine laws. There should be the debate on things. Maybe it's a good bill. Maybe it's a bad bill, right? Maybe the guy's guilty. Maybe he's not. Let us decide.
Well, they kind of had the same issue. It seems to me it was about 18 months ago when it was constantly in the local media with this whole thing of sealing affidavits, and not necessarily only for sex assault case. It seemed like it was judges picking and choosing based on who the defendant was.
Yep.
And then some of those they were permanently sealing, even when somebody was convicted.
Yep. And the reason that even came out was because the newspaper tried to get information on cases and they said it was sealed. And they ultimately had to sue. And they said, well, you can still seal, but you can't seal all the cases all of the time.
You have to list a reason.
Yeah. And
it can't be permanent, right? I think the law now says it can't be permanent if it's a conviction.
And when did all that start? When they started to do it digitally. It used to be you could walk into any court records room and pull any file you wanted for any damn reason. You didn't have to pay to pull the file. You had to pay to make copies, pay your 25 cents per page or what have you. Mm-hmm. But now you have to pay to access it. Then you come to find out it's sealed. You can't get access to it unless you're the attorney of record. Well, since when?
Right.
This is public information. Mm-hmm. And some people, well, that's just okay. We're going to protect privacy. You're in a court proceeding. I'm sorry, but it's going to be embarrassing. Mm-hmm. If you're a defendant, you probably did some things that are embarrassing. You probably would love the world not to know about it, but that's part of the legitimacy we get.
Right.
When we start doing things in closed courtrooms, we turn into third world, what are we in, Russia and China, mm-hmm. third world despot, type of thing, where one day here's the law, we've changed it. Oh, we'll change it back tomorrow when we like the person. I just don't get it.
I think not just in court. I mean, in every government proceeding, the more transparency, the better. And certainly in court proceedings. And I do think people have the right to know. Yeah.
I mean, it's their court system.
Absolutely.
It's the people. Yep. I mean, our judges stand for retention. They get appointed for a 2-year term by the governor. Then they have to run for retention after the first appointed 2 years, and then it's every 6 years thereafter. And most people always ask, as attorney, do you know any of these judges, or should we vote for the retention? I always say vote them all out, because most people just say retain, retain, retain. But in today's world, we should be able to look it up and say, hey, voter retention's up. Let me take a look. Oh, this judge in Adams County, she applied to be a judge 22 times. Finally, they gave it to her. She was not retained because everybody said she was horrific. Everybody knew it. That's why she never got appointed.
I think it's only happened about 6 times, hasn't it, in the state that the judge has been booted?
Not many. It takes a lot.
And 1 in Adams County or 2 in our home county?
2 in Adams County.
Yeah.
Denver, I can think of 1. Jefferson, I can think of 1. Smaller, out on the western slope, a little more likely because everybody knows they don't like that decision, which kind of goes back to the hometown politics thing.
Yep.
Those judges are always walking that tightrope of, I got to enforce the law, but, oh, he's a good kid. I've known him, been to church with him, sat in the pew behind me. But that's kind of what you get in a smaller town. Mm-hmm. And favors are done.
Oh yeah.
I still remember that case that we tried last year. I'm still bitter about it because I had to sue to get my final bill. But we go there and we kept thinking, how are you going to prove this case? You can't disprove self-defense, right? There were 2 witnesses and one isn't showing up to the courthouse to testify. And literally, I remember the DA literally looked me in the eye and said, Scott, This is the first murder in 3 years. We're going to let the people decide. Even though I think in good faith he knew he could not prove the case. So we had to, client had to spend the money, all that kind of stuff. But he knew. But he's like, let the jury decide. I'm not going to be the guy that's going to say we couldn't prove this case. And the jury promptly found him not guilty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a lot of frustration with a lot of parts of that case. But I kind of understand the DA's point, though, in terms of we're going to let a jury decide. I mean, that way he can say, we tried, we...
the people spoke.
Exactly. So...
And I get that, but they're playing with house money.
Yes.
If they lose, it was a bad day. Jury decided.
Didn't cost them anything.
Didn't cost them anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, that prosecutor, whether they were in courtroom or sitting in their office reviewing the next file, picking their witnesses for the cases or whatever comes up, they're playing with house money. But our client has to spend, a lot. Time, money, the stress, the emotional strain that comes with that, which mm-hmm. is why, prosecutors have such immense power to make those decisions. They can ruin people's lives. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes they even joke about it on TV. Oh, yeah, with a stroke of my pen, I can ruin somebody's life. I can throw them in jail. And it's just like, are you kidding me?
It's the same thing with police officers,
mm-hmm.
And that's one, I think we've discussed this before, but that's one of the things I used to talk about with some of my officers is, like a domestic violence call is so routine for a police officer. It's just roll your eyes, mundane. But that's a life-changing thing for that person usually. And it can ruin their life. They can lose their job. They can lose their kids. I mean, it's, and whether you're a prosecutor, whether you're a police officer, whether you're a judge, that has to be taken extremely seriously. And I mean, I understand human nature. Things do get routine or mundane or whatever, but you have to try to fight against that the best you can.
Yeah. But, in Colorado, as in most states, if there's a DV call, somebody's going to jail.
Almost always.
If not both.
Yep. Almost always.
And, that's always tricky. I've seen cases and, where people will get they'll get a DV case, they'll go get a civil protection order, but then they're like, I really need some help with the kids this week. Will you call and come over and take them? Well, you're not supposed to, defendant doesn't want to, like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but it's my kids. What am I going to do? And as the attorney, you have to say, don't do it. You're going to get arrested.
Mm-hmm.
She sent you to jail once. She will do it again. And when I say she, it could be he just as easily as a she. Do not do it. Do not do it. And
I remember, you talked about sometimes both get arrested. And I remember a conversation with the deputy district attorney who absolutely hated when we arrested both sides of it.
Because then they have to make a decision.
And then neither party's going to testify and they don't have a case.
Who are they going to dismiss? Who are they going to give immunity to?
Right.
Well, which one's more egregious? Oh, we have reports against the other guy. Maybe she was the aggressor. Maybe he or she knew how to play the game, so to speak. Mm-hmm. It can be very, very tricky. Mm-hmm. And I've even seen it where both parties get arrested and there's kids in the house, young kids, and they'll charge a child abuse case as well.
Mm-hmm.
The kids get taken off to social services, usually put with a family member somewhere down the line. But then you got to get social services involved. And you're arguing in front of the kids. And well, there was alcohol in the house and, adult libations were taking place, being consumed during this. So before we let your kids back, we're going to monitor you for alcohol. We're going to put you in alcohol classes. And,
mm-hmm.
and, like I said, then I had to quit my job because I was doing random UAs and they were across town from where my job was, but I had to be there before they closed and the boss got tired of it and I lost my job and now we're losing the house or the apartment.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong. Never, ever hit a girl. Never hit a girl. I always told that to my son.
No matter
what.
But
she did it. She started it. No, you never hit a girl. Bottom line. And,
but that's what I mean. Those, even something like a DUI often is life-changing. and not to mention the financial toll. So again, I'm not suggesting people shouldn't be arrested for those offenses. I'm just saying they should be taken absolutely seriously by the police officer, by the district attorney, by the judge. It's because it is the biggest deal in that person's life.
Yep. And that's what I think oftentimes prosecutors, judges, and even sometimes defense attorneys. I used to have a boss that he had something over his desk or his door as he walked out, and it said, "Remember, this may be their only case, or this is their only case." So in this world, this is the only thing they've got going on in their life. This is a huge deal. Is their career going to be ruined? That kind of thing. And I think sometimes, even defense attorneys are like, "Oh God, they're calling again. Oh my God, we're gonna ask the same question again." And you got to remember, this is the only thing in their life that's going on. This is affecting their livelihood. Are they going to see their children? Their wife has left them. Their spouse has left. I mean, it can be a big deal. But and this is probably even before your time. But I remember hearing stories where people got pulled over for a DUI, and the cops would be like, "Hey, it can happen to anybody. You're not that, but I'm going to drive you home. Promise me you're going to get your car in the morning." Right? We don't have that kind of discretion anymore.
Oh no.
I mean, I've seen people arrested in their driveways. They made it home safely. And the cops are like, "No, I followed you. You missed that stop sign that you always blow through because no one ever comes through that street. But I was sitting there tonight. I'm going to pull you over in your driveway and arrest you for DUI." And there's no discretion whatsoever. Our dumb criminal of the day in our show that we did today, DUI defendant, not a victim. The mayor.
Oh, geez.
of a town in Florida. I think it was Fort Myers, I think. And they're like, "I think it's the mayor." And they're like, she's like, "First of all, yeah, I'm the mayor, so-and-so." Then she's like, "No, I'm not the mayor. I am not the mayor at this moment." Because she knew of the political ramifications. And of course, the city made, we very disappointed. We're going to give the mayor her space. Well, no, she should probably resign.
Well, I guarantee you that the cop that pulled that person over, not knowing it was the mayor at the time, they weren't happy about it either.
Well, in this particular case, the cop was justified because the person called 911 and said, "This person followed us home," which we don't know, "and she pulled into our lawn and hit our mailbox." So there's definitely probable cause.
Yeah.
And I think she blew like a 0.18. So she was clearly over the limit, 0.16. So she's 2 times the legal limit. And yet, she still thought it'd be a good idea to drive home. It's one of the most preventable crimes that can be, doesn't have to happen.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have to happen. I don't know. All right. So let's get back to Kohberger, the man of the hour. I mean, obviously, if they're going death, the prosecution feel and they got a pretty strong case.
That's why I question, why was the rush to tear down the house? I mean, again, it seems like one of those things that I get it. The community wants to move on and et cetera, but that's something that can't be undone.
Yeah. And I know they took a lot of photographs. They took a lot of measurements, and I've only done one, let's go visit the crime scene once. We had all the buses and everything ready to go. And the judge was like, "Oh, we're not doing that. We don't have time for that." But we've seen it a couple of times recently, the Karen Reed case in Massachusetts, where there was a hung jury, but her boyfriend, police officer, she hit him, and whether he died in the house and, was she framed? And we also saw it in the Alec Murdaugh case down in South Carolina, where they went to view the crime scene, where Maggie and Paul were killed down at the kennels down by the house. And apparently it's quite routine in those jurisdictions. It's just never done here. But I agree with you. It's like,
what's the hurry?
Well, the owners of the rental house that they owned it, they donated it to the school.
Right. Yeah. So the university owned it.
Yeah. And so they immediately, I think they waited a couple of months, but then they still tore it down. And frankly, the person that favors in the long run is Bryan Kohberger.
Absolutely. That's why I don't understand what the rush was. I don't know why the DA would agree to that. Because again, what's the harm if it sits there unoccupied for another year?
Yeah. It makes people feel bad. Well, I hate to say it. People get murdered all the time. I hate to say it. The insensitive person here that I am, I guess, but it happens every day. People die in homes all the time. Oh my God, we're going to tear the house down. I mean,
if I understand wanting to tear it down after the verdict, or wanting to tear it down right away, but waiting until after the verdict, it doesn't hurt anything. People have lived with that vacant house in that town for 2 years since the murder.
Yeah.
What's it matter if they got to wait another year?
Yeah.
Because I don't know what reasons either side would have for going back there. But again, it seems like erring on the side of caution. Yeah. I mean, that would be like, sending a car that was used in a homicide to the salvage yard and, the wrecking yard or whatever.
I know. We have cases where cars are seized all the time. Or phones. And the defense was, can I get my phone back?
Nope.
It's not over. And if it goes to trial, nope, we're going to keep it till the end of the appeal.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had, I can't think of the specific case with you necessarily, but I've had cases where somebody's car has sat in impound for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then of course they can't afford to get it out after that anyway, because it's $28,000 impound fee.
Exactly, that they won't waive.
Yeah, but and it's far less serious cases than homicide cases, but they refuse to release it.
Yeah.
So it seems senseless to me to be in such a hurry to tear down that house. Again, is it opening up some type of appeal if he's convicted? I don't know, but again, why not err on the side of caution?
And in the Kohberger case, my recollection is that they did not object to it. They went and did their own site visit, photographed measurements, all those types of things. I'm sure they got every inch of the place covered. No, yeah, go ahead and tear it down. We're good with that. And maybe there's something in there that they knew existed that nobody else knew that was still there. I mean,
the prosecutor didn't object to it.
Yeah. Which is weird.
Yeah.
Very, very weird. And I understand, the emotional string, but it's a crime scene.
There's new information, especially in a case of that magnitude. A witness suddenly says something different than what they said before.
Yep.
That they were in a different location in the house, or that they were looking through a different window, or they remembered something. There's all kinds of things that could come up with, maybe it's evidence that's still being analyzed.
Yeah. What comes to mind to me in that type of situation is, we know there were two people in the house that heard commotion that called the police the following day, 5 hours after the murder.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the question is going to become is, what did they hear? Well, what's the best? I mean, I've had cases where literally we've hired acoustic engineers to say, well, somebody says they heard something or didn't hear something. All right, well, let's set up microphones in this house. Let's recreate it. We had one where we literally shut down a street, had to coordinate with the police to do all this testing to be able to shoot a firearm into, one of those barrels to see if somebody could have heard that go off. And I would think in the Kohberger case that's going to be relevant. You got these people that 4 people are killed with a knife.
Mm-hmm.
That's downright close and personal, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, these people don't hear anything in their rooms, or they hear a commotion, but not anything to, maybe to open their door, see a man walking by with bushy eyebrows and
dressed in black.
Yeah. But did you really hear it? Or, maybe you just had to go up and you had to go to the restroom in the middle of the night. I mean, those types of things, could you have really heard what you say you heard? Or is it people are suggesting what you heard? Well, what's the best way to do that? Well, test it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, so if they report hearing something from a room that's 3 doors down the hallway, how loud would that have had to have been for you to heard that? There's only to hear that. There's only one way to do that, and that's to test it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
Or
have to be a scientific test.
it could be a test of, let's bring the jury and put them in the room.
Exactly.
There's no way.
And we're going to have somebody start talking at different volumes.
Yep. Yep.
So that's that's what I said. It just seemed senseless to me to tear that down at this point when you've waited this long. What's another year?
And you just never know.
Yep, I agree.
Let's say Kohberger gets up there and is like, well, actually, I have been to that house a bunch of times, and I didn't bring my phone. And I did have a K-bar there, but that's because, there was this wall that we threw knives in and stars, because, that's what college kids do, stupid stuff, right? And if you had this, you would know that this was here, or there was a weird entrance, or, who knows?
Yeah, it could be. I've been at a party at that house before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I went with a friend. Of course, my car wouldn't show data there. And I still think, they've got some good stuff. I mean, just from not seeing all the discovery, but a knife is not a good killing instrument. Oftentimes people that use knives cut themselves when they're coming down on something and it hits bone, their hand slides off and they cut themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Kohberger didn't have any injuries, at least that we're aware of. Nobody noticed anything when he gets pulled over twice, I think, in Indiana, driving with his dad.
Mm-hmm.
They don't notice anything weird. Nobody notices any injuries. His dad doesn't mention it, or family, as far as we know. It's just, a knife is not the preferred method.
No.
Or as I always tell, the lovely Miss Kristen, when she's walking the dog, take a knife, don't do a jab, you do a slash.
Right.
Then when they're on the ground, you go and you put the knife right back here, right back there, you scramble the brains, instant rag doll, right? But
or run away,
or run as fast as you can, grab the dog and run.
Right.
But it's not a great instrument to do that. Now, clearly, Bryan Kohberger was successful at killing 4 people and then leaving the house for the most part undetected,
mm-hmm.
to the point where no one's like, oh yeah, there's a guy walking around. But people come to this house all the time. I mean, they had parties there where the police showed up and the police asked for the residents of the house, and they're like, yeah, none of the residents are here. So who knows how many people got there? And that's going to be, I think, the argument that the prosecution is going to have to make, or I'm sorry, the defense is going to have to make when it comes to that DNA, because juries love DNA evidence.
Yep.
And I have found in my experience, and maybe you can as well with handling cases, is that if you don't have a good explanation as to how that DNA got there, the defense has problems. Are they back?
I don't know.
I know they didn't go far because they didn't close their hangar door. They'll whip it around here and then they'll turn it off.
Well, it's, I was thinking of a double murder case that we handled recently, which was a stabbing with a knife. And that particular defendant had injuries all over him. So I agree with you. Whoop.
Hold on a second. Our neighbors have returned.
So it does seem a bit unlikely, depending on the type of knife.
Mm-hmm.
Certain kind of knives, your hand isn't as likely to slip down over the blade.
All right, let me take a couple of questions here. It looks like somebody said here, Toby says, didn't the prosecution say that they are not going to use the DNA?
I haven't seen that.
Not the DNA on the knife they haven't said they were going to use. It's the DNA that they used on the genetic genealogy. Because in the Kohberger case, they have this guy's, what they believe is his car. They think, we've got a suspect here, right? Then they follow him. They get the pizza box or whatever it was, some food item from the dad's trash can. Maybe I'm getting my cases mixed up with Hewerman. But, they get the genetic DNA. They say, hey, we've done our genetic DNA. We then ask for a sample under 41.1 saying we want to get Kohberger's DNA. Oh, coincidentally, it matches. So we're only going to use the DNA results from his known saliva sample and comparing that to the
Sheath.
DNA on the sheath. So that is what they said they weren't going to use, to my knowledge. Hopefully that answers your question, Toby, which opens up a whole new realm, because the defense, remember, they said, hey, we want everything in that genetic genealogy that you use to get the DNA to create the profile, to say it's a relation to the dad or what have you, which led him back to Kohberger. And originally the prosecution balked. Well, that was done by the FBI. They're not within our control. They don't report to us. And even the judge is like, no, they report to you. They worked on this case. Turn it over. And so once again, the prosecution had to turn it over. Looked kind of silly. Not like, once again, turn it over. If everything is legit and on the up and up, what have you got to worry about? We're going to convict him because we believe we have the right guy.
Just think of the amount of cases, though, that we've worked on where the amazing number of items that police or DA don't want to turn over, and it's always baffling to me.
Yep. Like I said, that's going to come down to more than likely motion to suppress, as it relates to that. I mean, although it's interesting, is because I mean, you have standing. Kohberger would have standing to contest that because he created the DNA profile from his dad from the pizza box, I do believe, takeout or something. And then you got to explain his, well, he always wore gloves when he was at home, and very anal retentive, doesn't cook from the same pot or whatever. So I mean, there's lots of weird stuff in this case, but oftentimes you get people in criminal cases engaging in weird activity.
Oh yeah, sometimes they're just weird people. I mean, maybe not, plenty of weird people out there not committing crimes that just do stuff that maybe is outside of the norm.
Yeah. Now, Kohberger's attorney, have you been able to watch the lead attorney? She's good. Okay. She's really good. God, what's her name? Why can't I remember her name? Kelly, I think, something. Anyway, she's really good. Shows up every time. And Taylor. Thanks, Frank. Hardest working man in show business, behind the scenes, making us look good. Ann Taylor. She was the head public defender. She's now in private practice. She's death penalty qualified. Very, very good. Been doing it for probably, I think, 25 years, if I recall. She shows up ready to rumble at every court appearance.
Wow. And
she is ready to go. And frankly, she makes the prosecution look like they're on their heels a lot of the time. And she's doing a great job, because I've said this before. Sometimes the job of a criminal defense attorney is to make the very simple and very complex, non-complex, complex, and to take the complex and turn it into very simple ideas. Oh, this is a straightforward case. He's on video doing it. Well, no, you can't trust the video. Oh, there was mental health issues. You create issues out of it. And I remember a judge in Denver. He always said, he was referring to a study, which I don't know the site to but I'll take his word for it. But it made sense. He said that oftentimes in the most straightforward cases usually turn out to be the longest trials and the most expensive, for example, like at state expense, because they got to pull out all the stops. They got to leave no stone unturned so that after the trial, the post-conviction, they don't say, well, you didn't do this. You didn't do this. Why didn't you do this? Which I think is always interesting. And so like in the Kohberger case, you have a case where, they think, oh, it's him. There's questions whether that was his car. His cell phone is out, he's out driving around randomly looking at the stars. Okay, I get it. Could be, but there's not a lot of coincidences in criminal defense. Have you come to that conclusion over the years?
Yeah. We try to argue a lot of coincidences. You were talking about making the complex simple, and that's a frequent argument that we have with DNA is there's an easy explanation, not so much arguing whether it's their DNA, but there's an easy explanation for why their DNA is there.
Of course his DNA is going to be there. He's at the house all the time.
Right.
And somebody transferred that. And, like I said, he was there and maybe he was showing off his knife. That, we don't know how they traced the knife back to him other than the sheath, but where's the knife? Knife's never been recovered.
Right.
Where is it? Where did he purchase it from? Did he? I guess the thing, maybe he was in fact framed. I don't know.
Well, it could be a much easier explanation. He's been there to a party before. He was showing off his knife to somebody and he lost his sheath.
It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. It's nothing fancy. That's just the truth. And that's what happens. And think about it. How many times have you lost something that you thought you'd never, ever lose?
I'm old. It happens every day.
My keys. Where'd I put my keys? I just had them.
Right.
I usually try to keep important things, though, that I like and cherish close by, put them in safe spots.
Well, there's this is one of those cases where it's not just one thing you have to explain.
There's a lot of things.
There's a lot of things, like why is his car, driving by that house or on that block so many times?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a tough one to explain.
At those hours of the morning.
Those are things that are going to be a lot tougher to explain. If you just had to explain the DNA on the knife sheath, that would be one thing. Or if you just had to explain why his car was in that neighborhood one time. Yeah. But again, it's putting all those things together that I think is, making it such a difficult case to defend.
Why was he doing such an extreme detail on his car the following day?
Right, the following day.
Yeah, I really like to have a clean car. It's all about cleanliness. You know what I mean? Somebody, hi, it's not real. I keep going back to why no solid alibi. His alibi is, I was out driving out around looking at the stars. And I think there's been some different people saying, well, it was cloudy that night, or it was, but
that's why he was
it could be
driving
cloudy
so much.
here.
He had to get to a clear area.
Had to get to a clear area to look at really the stars.
Absolutely.
Now, I didn't bring a telescope or binoculars to look at the pretty stars. I was just driving around looking out of my car window as I drive, look at the pretty stars. There's a lot of stuff.
Well, there's a lot of cases. If you think about, if somebody said to you, where were you 3 weeks ago at 1 a.m. on Wednesday night? If you're single or you live alone, how are you going to have an alibi? How are you going to have anybody as an alibi? I was at home in bed.
Your phone.
Well, right.
Do some geofencing around my dorm room in Washington State where he resided. And that's where my phone was. I left my phone. I turned it on. I couldn't get reception. It happens all the time when you look at the pretty stars of the mountains.
But then, then they make the argument that, well, he's a smart criminal, so he left his phone at home.
Yeah. No, I agree. But once again, I am not condoning crime, but if you're going to commit a crime, don't take your phone. Do not take your phone, for goodness sakes. Mm-hmm. Somebody had a good comment here. Where was it? Moments in trading. I couldn't even count all the things I've lost at murder scenes. So true. It happens all the time. I was there, and then what a coincidence. A murder just happened to happen that I was there. We've joked about it at the office, and if I could find somebody that could come up with an app, I think we could make a lot of money. And that app would, like a VPN or whatever, it would put you at a particular location and would override all the other data in your phone.
Wow.
You're
thinking like a criminal.
Sometimes,
or criminal defense attorney.
Criminal defense attorney, thinking like a criminal defense attorney. That's what it comes down to. Let's see here. Oh, Toby says the defense was never said he was looking at stars. What they said was that he would take walks at night. There you go.
Well, he could drive somewhere to take a walk.
Sure.
You could take a walk in the same neighborhood all the time.
In the middle of the night.
Absolutely.
I do it all the time. No, I don't.
But
I don't.
But for all we know, he's got some witness neighbor that says, yeah, he is out walking in the middle of the night sometimes.
Yeah. It's not real. Yeah. Wouldn't you say I was out driving with friends? Yes, but Bryan Kohberger, he's a loner. None of his friends truly appreciate what his walks at night. Appreciate that.
Here's the problem with saying you're out with friends, though, because then they say, okay, tell us who your friends are. Well, I don't know them. I don't remember their names. Or the one we always get, I don't know his real name, but he goes by Monster.
Dude.
Yeah. He's just known as Dude on the street.
True story. Melissa worked for me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
She's now a judge, but it was the case. And during that time, Dude, I was with Dude. Everyone knows him as Dude. Hey, what's up, Dude? Dude, right? We actually represented, Melissa had a client that he legally changed his name to Dude.
Wow.
And I remember talking to him, like, dude, do you know how many crimes that you've been associated with? And you're the best friend of everybody, but the friends with no one. I mean, that's how crazy it was.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, don't change your name to Dude. There's your pro legal tip of the day. Don't change your name to Dude.
It's funny that the caller or the texter asked about why not just say you're out with friends. But that's why, if you're going to talk to the police, which we both feel the same way about that.
Don't ever.
But if you're going to, you have to be so careful, because if you say I was here, there's surveillance footage from there that's going to refute that, or there's cell phone information that's going to refute that, or there's witnesses that are going to, so again, that's why we say don't talk to the police. They always say that, hey, they want to clear you if you didn't do it, or I'm just here trying to help you. I know I did that for a long time.
My personal favorite is, so in the client interview, did you make any statements to the police, before you get discovery? Well, I didn't make any statements, but I talked to him for a little bit. Oh, okay. And what were you talking about? Well, I just wanted to figure out what was going on, because I had no idea. Well, what did you do? Well, I put myself at the scene, but I didn't do anything. Well, you put yourself at the scene. And what people don't remember is you are locked into that statement.
Yep.
And if you change it, well, you're not being truthful. You're lying. And you say, well, I thought they were talking about the other day, not this day, So just wait and see. Be patient.
And we do the same thing from the defense perspective with police witnesses, prosecution witnesses all the time.
Yep.
That's why I go to interview them, because, they said X, Y, and Z, and it's recorded. And then I go out and talk to them, and what they say is slightly different, or moderately different, or completely different.
Yep.
And so again, their credibility is just as much in question. So it works both ways.
It does. And the other thing that people don't seem to get, people in the defendant's seat, or even people that follow these type of cases oftentimes, is when they give you the Miranda warnings, this is the dumb criminal of the day warning. All right. The United States Supreme Court made this up. Nowhere in the United States Constitution is it required to get a Miranda advisement. It wasn't until, I think, 1968 or 71 or something, Miranda v. Arizona,
Yep.
where the Supreme Court said, we're going to create an advisement. If you are in custody and you are being interrogated about a specific crime, not just, hey, what's your name? Where, need your identifying information. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have a right to a lawyer. It is the United States Supreme Court saying, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, idiot. Don't say a word. And yet everybody does it.
It is few and far between the client that does not think that they could outsmart the police. It's pretty rare. I bet it's 10% of the cases that I work on where the defendant did not make a statement.
Yeah.
Maybe not even 10%.
But I think about it where the cases where we have either walked somebody on a homicide or got an exceptional result on a homicide, 9 times out of 10, they kept their mouth shut. And because let's wait and see what you got.
I think the one exception to that would be a self-defense case.
Yes. If you truly believe it's self-defense,
right,
you stop right there.
I was in fear for my life.
You call the cops and you say, I was in fear of death or serious bodily injury, and I shot the man. Unfortunately, he will not be joining us, providing a statement because he is dead.
Yep. And
most of those cases, you get a good result. You get a very good result.
Yep.
But, and the general rule of thumb is somebody's on your porch. No, wait till they break that threshold. Refer to your local jurisdiction for the law. But here in Colorado, you got to make my day. They came into the house. I fired. They're dead. And I was in fear of death or serious bodily injury.
And don't shoot them in the back when they're running out the door.
Exactly. Drag them back inside.
Right.
I shot him in the front. He rolled over. I shot him in the back because he was still moving. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
I'm just joking, ladies and gentlemen. Don't take that serious, okay? But I had remember, I won't mention his name, but you remember that client that we had that liked to threaten public officials?
Yes.
And we, at a certain point, we're like, we're just done.
Yep.
We're done. I remember talking to an attorney that had, and he was literally like, if that guy comes near my house, I will drag him inside and then shoot him. He was that scary. And remind me when we're done, but that individual may have picked up another case in a different jurisdiction.
That's a shot
for threatening public officials. Imagine that. The world, past performance is indicative of future results.
Yes, it is.
Like I said, Miranda, they're warning you. But what people also don't get is anything you say to anyone. It's not, people always think, well, I didn't tell the police anything, or I just said I was there, but I didn't do anything. That's all they can use. No, your spouse that you told the night before, your buddy that you bragged about that you were going to do it, or later, those all come in as admissions by a party opponent. It's relevant. Anything you say, where does it say anything you say only to the police can be used against you? Doesn't say that.
One of the tricks that we used to use, I remember when we first got cameras in our car, and we didn't even have, it wasn't even all our cars that had cameras, but along with that camera was a microphone. And so oftentimes what you would do, you arrest somebody, you put them in the back seat, and then you go finish what you're doing. But you always go back and watch that and listen to it.
They were always talking to themselves.
They're always talking. Same thing in interview rooms. You see that, because if you notice, they always leave that running.
They always leave it running.
And it is amazing. There doesn't have to be anybody else in there. They will. Oh, I can't believe I said that. You know what I should have said? It's amazing.
They talk out loud.
Yep.
Yeah, and they sit there and they start sweating. Like, this is, I can't believe, Jesus, crazy. I should have been, they confess.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come back in. Hey, would you like to change your story? No. All right. Well, can I go now? No, you're under arrest for whatever crime we're investigating you for.
Mm-hmm.
It's can be ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
John P. Some people need to use super glue and lipstick
Amen.
And they can't stop talking. It is unbelievable.
Mhm.
I mean, and they always think they're smarter than the cops.
Always.
And what they don't remember is like, nothing's changed. All these crimes, that's why I always love going back, go to the old case reporters, the early ones, turn of the early 1900s. It's all the same crimes: theft, burglary, rape, robbery, murder. It's the exact same thing.
Yep.
The only thing that changes is how they caught the person.
Yeah, the technology.
Technology. The government is always using the available technology that is there to use it to solve crime. And in today's world, maybe you have certain expectation of privacy in your phone, but you don't have expectation of privacy to everything that's backed up in the cloud or on your iCloud that they can get access to. Oh, you don't want to give us your phone? Oh, you mysteriously lost your phone. Oh, that's okay. We have other ways of going about it. It may take us a little longer, but we'll get it. And people just don't. Well, they don't think.
We get the cases all the time where, they got client's phone and the clients, they've deleted everything on their phone. That doesn't matter.
It's still there.
It's either it's on the phone or, Facebook Messenger has it saved or, TikTok has it saved or whatever it is. It's always available.
My personal favorite is Snapchat. People are like, oh, I'm going to use Snapchat.
It disappears in a minute.
It disappears after 30 seconds or whatever. Not on TikTok servers. And they say, oh, I was communicating through TikTok. And social media, I mean, we've talked about this, for work. It's the first thing the police do these days is go directly to your social media.
It's the first thing I do too.
Yeah.
First thing I do when I get a case, I get the names and I start doing social media searches on everybody involved. It's amazing what you find.
And it's usually not good photographs. Clients charged with shooting somebody or menacing, they shouldn't possess firearms. And half of the photos on their Facebook page are them holding guns, pointing at people with, a bunch of money that they stole from somebody. Oh, just pulled a lick and,
Yeah. Or the client that says, I've never belonged to a gang in my life. I've never claimed a gang. And you find 37 pictures on their social media, them with their, their gang buddies, and they're throwing signs and they're all wearing the same colors and they're, hashtag whatever, hashtag criminal life. And, it's
thug life.
It's almost no different than talking to the police.
Yeah. Comfortably Numb 491 says, what do you do about people constantly trying to frame me for crimes?
You
comfortably numb. You move, get a new set of friends. I don't know. Sally says, like police or prosecutors. I do. I like lots of police officers. I mean,
I've still got a ton of buddies who are, in fact, I ran into two of them before I came here. They're both still in police work.
Yeah. It's interesting. And there was a homicide detective, and he was a good homicide detective. And one day I'm going over to the police department to do an interview with somebody. And the detective's like, hey, Scott, what's going on? And I'm like, hey, detective, blah, blah, blah. What's going on? I'm like, what are you doing sitting here in the fishbowl? He'd gotten in some trouble. And now he's, not a detective anymore in homicide where he'd been for 20 years.
Right.
Sitting behind the glass, helping people walking in. Can I help you, ma'am?
Yeah.
Can I help you, sir? Let me get a detective, And you talk to them and they're like, yeah, it's time for me to go. I'm going to retire. I got 6 months. Everybody agrees we're going to, it's best for me to go because, they don't like the way I handle things, a little more old school. And, I know what he was talking about. I mean, I remember cases where it's like, you're a little, you squeezed that witness just a little bit, but, I get it. And, but it was not crossing the line, but just right up to it. And you cross-examined on it. And he knew the game, so to speak. But, in today's world, you push just a little too hard and it's a whole new world. And those police unions, they may defend you to the end of the earth, but the administration will not.
No, it's funny that you say that, because when I started as an officer in the mid 90s, we still had some guys in our department who had been there since the early 70s. And you listen to the stories they tell, and that was like a completely different world. And it's the same thing now. I mean, just from, I haven't been a police officer for 19 years or something. And just how much the environment, the culture, whatever, the way of doing the job has changed. So it's night and day difference.
I had a friend, I knew him from the military. He was in the reserves. We kind of got out, and he was like Vietnam era guy, but he was a Denver police officer. I won't mention his name. His daughter was a police officer. I think she's retired as a police officer. But he was like, oh, and this was 20 years ago. And he was like, oh man, it used to be you walk up to a car and somebody said something to you, you pull out your billy club and you smash their arm with it, or you drag them out the window. And, there's a certain amount of respect that was developed between people. And, you didn't have to worry about surveillance cameras. You didn't have to worry about body cam. That thin blue line, protect all. I didn't see anything. I was looking over here and I didn't see a thing.
Even the public had a different sort of image or viewpoint of police officers. And I think the general public tolerated a little bit more of that, sort of for the greater good, if you will.
Yeah.
And culturally, that just isn't the case anymore.
Yeah, it's a weird, I wouldn't say weird, it's a changing world. But as things get more lawless, so to speak, because it seems like it is.
Sure seems like it.
Certainly in my neighborhood, it seems like it is. Heck, this is a weird story, and I can send, we'll do it another time, but we were in South Carolina over the weekend, and we got a ring notification. Kind of scary, actually. The lovely Miss Kristen was quite freaked out about it, because we had the dog sitter that was at the house. And so it's like 11 something East Coast time. We're there. We get this ring notification, and it was the Ring doorbell. It's like, okay, that's weird. But we went back and looked at it. It's like, why would this guy come up to our door, has a hoodie on?
Oh, geez. Face
covered with his mask, rings the doorbell, and then runs away across the street to the park. And we're like, that's very, very odd. Very odd. So then I go back to the other video system that we had installed when somebody broke in and stole bikes from the house, from the garage. And you can see that there's a couple of people out there, and they're messing around, and they're out there by our dog sitter's car. Like, that's really weird. And once again, you see it better. The guy has like a hat on, a Chicago Bulls hat, and he hits our Ring doorbell, runs away. And unbeknownst to us at the time, because we noticed a little bit later, and apparently she didn't hear the doorbell, but the dog sitter then goes out front to let the dog out for her evening, potty break before she goes to bed. And she's sitting out there watching, totally unbeknownst to her, and us at the time, that somebody had ran off into the darkness across the way into the park. And so, the lovely Miss Kristen called the police, and coincidentally, they called right back. It's like, hey, this is Officer so-and-so in the neighborhood, drove by, didn't see anything, but I was in the area because we had somebody called about something else that was weird and unusual, generally fit the description. So these kids were up to no good. And I don't think it was a neighborhood kid, but it was just weird. And then she, the officer's like, well, do you want me to go by and, say something and, let your dog sitter know? No,
it'll freak her out.
We'll totally freak her out. We'll tell her later.
Right.
But once again, never had that stuff before. And, was it just kids ringing doorbells? Maybe, but why would you pick one with a Ring doorbell on it? I got this big camera outside my front door to pick it up. Unfortunately, there's a tree right in front of it, so you couldn't see what they were doing to her car. I don't think there's any damage to it, but where I live, not far, the city just bought all these hotels for $30-40 million. They were spending $100,000 a month to put the homeless people / drug users into It's one of them where we have a murder case.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
And the crime statistic in our neighborhood, because of all of that went in there, is up 2,300%. Businesses are literally shutting down in the area. And I mean, there's a liquor store just been robbed so many times. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You know, like, what are they to do? Right? Well, their liquor store, their business, it's this mom and pop liquor store. They've been robbed. I mean, they can't keep having all that shrinkage of their product go out the back door, or company breaking in, and insurance company, is going to drop them because they get the front window broken in so many times. And, what people don't get is, like, you get more of what you tolerate, and crime creates poverty. Crime creates reduced property values. People in that area, businesses shut down. People don't go there because businesses, I mean, who was telling me? God, I can't remember, but like, I think it was Kristen. She goes into like Walgreens, like everything, even toothpaste is locked up these days because they've been robbed blind. Well, by all these,
and they're told not to confront people that are stealing.
So they just walk out the door.
So their only other option is to lock everything up.
Yep.
It's frustrating.
And it's frustrating. Like I said, all it does is create, if you tolerate that, you create poverty, you create less businesses, your homeowners' values go down. And I mean, it's just complete nonsense. And you're not helping these people by doing, giving them this free stuff, so to speak.
Well, and there's plenty of examples of that. Look at what's happened in San Francisco, and everybody's businesses closing, and even downtown Denver. I mean, it's a shell of what it was just 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, they want to spend I think it's $500 million to basically give incentives for businesses that have left to come back to go downtown. But if you've been downtown recently, there's nobody downtown.
Well, no, that's people didn't return to the offices after COVID, and so those areas downtown just kind of got taken over.
Yep.
And there's a reason why crime has increased as much as it has. And I like to joke that it's means good business for me, but I don't go downtown Denver anymore.
Why would you?
Not after dark. Heck no.
No, it's crazy. Well, even in our own neighborhood, we were out walking the dog the one night, and there were these guys over the last couple of years, young gang members come in on little 4-wheel drives or little motorbikes, and they come in, they rob people, and they rob usually young kids and take their shoes and their phones. But we're out there walking the dog, and these people come up on this property. What's the word I'm looking? And they're little motorbikes, and they're kind of looking weird. Like, what are you doing? And Kristen's looking at me like, okay. She's like, did you bring anything? And just they kind of look at us, and we look at them. I'm like, what's up, guys? How you doing? You can't show any sort of weakness in that situation because they always go after the weak. And I'm like, hey, what's up, guys? Like, I'm getting a good look at you here. I'm not saying I got something in my pocket, but
you never know.
The old, you want to F around and find out?
Right.
I was in fear of death or serious bodily injury, officer. I called the police immediately. That kind of a situation. And, they went about their business. But, gee, guys, why are you riding motorbikes and four-wheelers in the middle of the park like that, across the field and zigzagging around? First of all, you're not supposed to do that. Second of all, you're tearing up the soccer fields. And third, you're making everybody real nervous here. So why don't you just move along?
And teenagers have always been teenagers and a little bit mischievous and all that kind of stuff. But it seems like even that type of general mischief has changed. It's just things seem more malicious, and you know what I mean? Like the number of people that are out looking for open car doors, and that's one of the things that the Ring doorbells and all that kind of stuff you see all the time now. The Nextdoor app is a popular one for that, and every morning people are posting videos of these people were car prowling. Luckily our doors were locked, but it shows them checking the door handles on the cars in the driveway and in the street, and It's just,
Big plane landing,
yeah.
thrust reversers.
Yeah. So yeah, it just seems like it's everywhere and it's all the time.
And I'm probably, speaking of the neighborhood watch thing or whatever, Facebook,
Mhm.
there was a case where it was in Commerce City, which is north of where I live, where somebody had a motorcycle stolen, and the kids walk up. One's carrying a pistol, got their hoodie on.
I saw that.
The other one's carrying an AK.
Because they're stealing it out of a garage,
They're
right?
stealing out of a garage.
Yep.
And I responded to one of the posts because somebody says, well, they did leave their garage door open. And my response was, I don't care if they left their garage door open. Why would these punks think that they can go into somebody's house, their garage, and steal a motorcycle, and they just casually are walking around in the middle of the night with an assault weapon and pistol with a light mounted on the pistol as well?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no. I mean, I got a couple of people liked my comment, but I'll probably get canceled from the neighborhood because I was just like, no, you keep your hands off other people's stuff, and the law needs to change that garages include and other curtilages of the residents should be included in the Make My Day. Mm-hmm. People were like, a couple of people were like, yeah, love, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not, you're right. But if I have a privacy fence, I have a locked gate. But if somebody's standing on my back porch in the middle of the night, that's not included in the Make My. Well, they're up to no good if they're doing that.
Yeah. Why are you here?
Right. And there's only one thing that's going to happen next, and that's they're going to try to get into the house.
Meet Mr. Benelli.
Yep.
He was manufactured in Italy, but he's a very fine shotgun. Yeah. And you're not even going to hear the
right. Yeah.
And so, it's just, I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you keep your damn hands off of other people's stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's a big one.
That is a beautiful Falcon 900. 3 engines.
In response to those posts, the other comments that I always have to respond is when somebody says, well, if I saw them trying to get into my truck, I'd go out and shoot them. And I always post, and then we'll see you in jail.
Yeah.
And they argue about, well, they're on my, and I say, I understand your point, and I would be equally frustrated, but you have to understand the law. And, we've had clients too, where they're legally carrying a weapon or they have a concealed permit, but they don't know the law around when you can and cannot use it. And I'm seeing more and more of those also.
I like weapons. I make no secret to anybody on here. I mean, I like them. I got a bunch of them. But as I tell my clients, they complicate everything.
They sure do.
And you cannot even point it at somebody without facing potential legal consequences of a menacing charge or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. It's literally something of last resort. I mean, there's a video going around went viral a couple weeks ago where this guy gets out of his truck with a gun, like tapping on the guy's truck window, and the guy rolls his window down. He's yelling at him or whatever, and the guy inside the truck shoots him. Guy inside the truck, he's not getting charged because that guy came up to him with a gun. He was in fear of death or serious bodily injury. But guess what? I bet that guy had a few sleepless nights. Probably still does. Are they going to find me or charge me? Am I going to get sued for wrongful death? Well, his whole world has changed.
What I tell people all the time is even if you are completely justified, if you shoot somebody, you're going to go to jail. Now it'll get sorted out, hopefully, eventually, but just plan on that you're going to go to jail.
Yeah.
But we were talking about people carrying guns legally. I had 2 clients in 1 month in the same southern suburb on their way to work. They have a concealed weapon permit, both guys, road rage kind of thing. And both of them raised their gun in their own car just to show the person, listen, leave me alone, I have a gun. Both of them got tracked down and got charged with felony menacing. Again, I tell people you have to know the laws surrounding you. You can't show it just to say to somebody, leave me alone.
Yep. Oh, I had a guy, he had a security clearance, one of those alphabet agencies, same type of deal. Somebody tailgating him, road raging him. puts the gun up on the dash. Well, that guy, he pulled a gun on me.
Yep.
Guy got arrested, charged, almost lost his security clearance job. And it's one of those things. Do you risk going to trial and the whole kit and caboodle, or do you take a plea and they guarantee you're not going to lose your job because of it, your security clearance? But guess what? Next time that job comes down to the guy that's never been in trouble with equal qualifications and you, guess what? They're probably going to go with that guy because, gee, is this guy a hothead?
Yep.
Oh, you guys did a background check. You knew about it. One day he popped somebody in the nose. Well, you knew about it. Next thing you know, it's negligent hiring.
Yep.
I mean, it just starts a train of events that you sometimes cannot stop that train. And so you got to be super smart about it. And until the law changes that, you can shoot people to protect your property, and that's not in the law anymore. Right. I mean, we had the case that we followed down in Arizona. We streamed it, where the rancher shot the illegals coming over his property and, multiple rounds. The jury, I think they hung. They hung and they didn't retry it because I think it was like one holdout that wanted to convict him. But that guy, he's 70 something years old, looking to spend the rest of his days potentially in prison, probably mortgage the ranch, so to speak, to pay the attorney, pay the experts.
Yep.
And so, if you, maybe get one of those, not that I don't have it, I'm not promoting it, but those insurance policies, but even them, I think are a little sketch when it comes to actually defending you.
Oh yeah.
And the, but if you carry a gun, you better just set up your criminal defense attorney fund, put a couple $100,000 in there for the trial experts, maybe posting bond something along those lines, little money to save. So if you're going to conceal carry, you better be last resort. And
I am, you and I have talked about this. I'm every bit a Second Amendment guy, but
sure.
Again, you better know the law, and absolutely, if you have to defend yourself, you defend yourself, but just understand that there still will be consequences that will come with it. And as long as you know that up front and you're accepting that and you're willing to do that, then that's fine.
And even though a lot of states, if you're not the initial aggressor, you don't have a duty to retreat. You can stand there and say, bang. But the prosecutor's going to say, well, you didn't run away. Did you have your cell phone with you? You could have called somebody, right? You could have got back in the car. Even though that's inappropriate, and I always object to those type of questions when they come up, because the judge has no duty to do any of that. And that's mischaracterizing the evidence that they had to do some lesser option. But everyone in that jury is going to say, man, had the family over there. They look so sad and they're all staring at us with those big puppy dog eyes. Gee, maybe you could have done something a little differently. I mean, you better have a very righteous case.
And even if you walk out of the courtroom, you're out $100,000
at least
or more. I mean, that's a significant part of your retirement, it's still a life-changing thing. And that's why, with your eyes fully wide open, fully informed, make those decisions should be made before you ever decide to carry.
Yep.
And then if you're fully informed and still decide to, then at least you're making those decisions with all the information available.
Yep. I mean, you have to be fully committed and understand what you're getting yourself into. And the biggest thing that I always say on the show is let it go. Those road rage incidents.
Oh yeah.
Let it go. You don't know if that guy in the car, if he's got a gun. I mean, I can think of a number of cases, road rage incidents. They get to a stoplight. The other guy gets out of the car, walks up to the car and shoots the other person. The guy waits there, he drives away and they get him. And they're going away from Earth for the rest of their life because somebody cut them off. And at that moment, that was the most important thing that had to be dealt with that way. It's just ridiculous. And how do you justify? I mean, he's a defense attorney. You're going to, he had the gun. The other guy didn't have a gun. He got out of the car, walked up to the car, shot him. I mean, how is that not after deliberation?
Yeah.
It's almost classic textbook deliberation.
Yep.
Because that prosecutor's going to say, so let me get this straight. You then pulled up to the stop site after this little incident. You retrieved your firearm. You were thinking about retrieving your firearm. You opened your car door, or you put it in park. You opened your car door. You opened your door. You got out. You walked around. You took at least 10 steps. That took a good 5 seconds. And then you walked up. You pulled the gun up. You pulled the trigger, and you got back in the car and calmly drove away. How is that not after deliberation?
Textbook.
People just don't get it.
Yep.
People don't get it. All right, Mark, we've been here a while now, haven't we?
I don't even know what time it is.
2 hours. Man, that goes by so fast, doesn't it?
That did, yeah.
Wow. I wonder what Scott would do if faced with a criminal gun situation in real life. I would hopefully use the same advice that I just gave. Be absolutely certain, Scott, is this the thing you want to do? Someone said, I watched a 911 call this weekend. A guy was watching his neighbor's house getting robbed and told 911 operator several times, I'm going out with my rifle to stop them.
Oh, geez.
911 said not to, and he did it anyway.
Wow.
Says the shooter didn't go to jail, prison yet. I mean, yet is, that's me, but
wow.
So yeah, I think high is not real. I agree. The laws need to change. I mean, and that's really what's going to take. I remember this is the old West. We used to hang people for stealing people's cattle.
Mm-hmm.
You don't mess with other man's stuff or woman's stuff.
Well,
bottom line.
I mean, people don't go to jail anymore for stealing cars and breaking into cars, or they're released on PR bonds, and
it's just stuff. It's just a property crime.
It is, but it's also the old theory of the hand in the cookie jar. You let the kid get away with reaching the cookie jar, they're going to keep doing it more and more often. And it's the same thing with the people committing those kind of crimes. If they don't think there's any repercussions, or
why not
very minimal repercussions, then maybe the risk is worth the reward. And
you get more of what you tolerate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And like I said, until the law changes, and it has to be very clear, if somebody is on your property or near your vehicle, and you can, but I don't see that that law coming into effect anytime soon.
Oh,
at least not here in the state of Colorado.
No,
not in the state of Colorado. We don't have any crimes for it. It's all perfect. Everything's perfect.
Right.
There's nothing. Everything's perfect. People are just exaggerating here in Colorado of anything that takes place. It's just a crazy world.
Any video you may have seen is.
Do not believe that nonsense.
It's AI.
It's all AI.
Yeah.
That's the claim.
Right.
All right, Mark. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our show tonight. A little different than what we normally do, different format. We weren't at the CrimeTalk studios. We came to the CrimeTalk 1 hangar, since we had no CrimeTalk 1 here yet, but soon they're going to rebuild that. They're going to rebuild that landing gear soon. I can feel it. Anyway, it's going to be done. But hope you enjoyed it. Mark Carlson, private investigator here in Colorado. If you ever need a private investigator in Colorado or anywhere, I guess you could do
absolutely
do work. He's the best, and man, he's right on it.
Thank you.
He's on it. I always joke, investigators, when they first start out, you get the leather bound report with indexes and tabs and everything's to scale. And then you get, we go from there to an email to, oh, you didn't get that voicemail? No, I need paper. Well, I left you a sticky note on your chair. Didn't that? No, I need a real report. Because that's usually because they get so busy.
I'm still pretty good about writing the reports.
Oh, you're great about reports. Even if it is an email and says, hey, I talked to this guy, they said nothing.
Right.
Or, oh, this is not good.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a very interesting world out there. Say the least. And you never know when you may need a private investigator, but I don't think you do surveillance, right? You don't do cheating spouse stuff.
Nope. None of that.
But if you need him to track somebody down, Mark Carlson, he's the guy. Do you have a website?
I do. It's carlsoninv.com.
Okay, carlsoninv.com. He's our go-to guy. We use him for everything. So
thank you.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you tomorrow on our regular show. And remember, the Constitution matters.